once upon a midnight dreary.
All right.
Yeah.
Welcome to Nerd Night Perspectives. We're here to talk about the House of the Fall of the House of the Usher. Something or other.
And we are recording, right?
We are recording right now.
Sound good?
The Fall of the House of Usher, directed by Mike Flanagan. Love a lot of his stuff. We're here with Sean, Jonathan, and of course myself, Matt. What do you guys have to say right out the gate? Let's not get too in depth. Let's keep it somewhat structured. I'm gonna tap the sign. Says the structure of this podcast.
Right. Flashing lights.
I guess I want to open the gate with just like remarkable. It's pretty rare, I think, that you watch something this long that the whole thing seemed intentional. Like there were not a whole lot of moments where you're like, well, all right, we're just like filling time here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then also that I don't think that there was a character that was not well acted. Like maybe a couple of people that weren't the strongest links, but like holy smokes, as these people are really going through it, they depicted something that I think would be really difficult to capture well, which is just madness, like absolute insanity, and everybody, all the supporting actors, all of that just killed it. So yeah, well executed, yeah. I would say, well written.
There were a lot
of characters. There was.
Yeah,
Well, I wanted to say not only was it well executed, I think it was well adapted. This is, sure some of you literature nerds probably can tell by the name of this. This is somewhat of an adaptation of The Fall of the House of Usher, but it is also an adaptation of a lot of Edgar Allan Poe's short stories.
Primarily The Raven.
Well, yeah, the Raven. Primarily The Fall of the House of Usher.
Right.
I don't like Edgar Allan Poe.
Well,
I can't stand his poetry.
It's in his name, poetry.
Right.
But
Poet.
I liked a lot of like the ones they kind of so basically I'm just going to give a quick synopsis of what happens in the show real quick. Basically some rich people have a bunch of kids. Pharmaceutical magnates they're experiencing. They have a bunch of kids, and every one of them is dying. And on each one of these ones that dies, this isn't a spoiler. This is like straight in the beginning of the show. They show you these people die, but in each one of them, as they reflect, represents a different short story that Poe has written. Some big ones you might remember, or people might remember, are the Mask of the Red Death, the Pit and the Pendulum, and my favorite was the Cask of Amontillado, which does come in at the end. That is a spoiler. Grow up. It says spoilers in the title.
Right. You've been warned. You've been warned.
But this was fantastic. I love the way that it interprets and reimagines a lot of these short stories in a modern setting, and to all connect with each other as one overall story. I think that was great, personally.
Yes. Yeah, it was a fascinating way to capture all of that, and I love that the whole thing took place kind of through the perspective of this interview, right?
Mm-hmm.
That like the whole story is kind of being told in hindsight, and I know that the like kind of the two timelines kind of meeting at the end there is a little bit of a trope, like it's not like they're the first people that did it, but I do think they executed it pretty well. Definitely one that I don't think that they flopped the ending on,
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I thought it was so interesting that they they pretty much start at the end and end with the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah. Kind of using
like
that
almost
kind of
completely
prologue deal. I like when they can do that effectively. I don't always love it, but I usually, if it's done well, it's great.
Yeah, no, it was certainly done well in this case. Yeah, I usually have a hard time when they throw you around the timeline constantly, but this was just so. I couldn't imagine it executed another way.
So this was directed and I think it was written by Mike Flanagan, who's done a lot of some of my favorite series on Netflix. He's done The Midnight Mass. He's done The Haunting of Hill House. He's done a few others I haven't seen yet, but they also haven't been getting the same amount of praise. So I haven't been as motivated, but I will watch them eventually. Haunting of Bly Manor and Midnight Club, I think. Mike Flanagan's great, though. I love a lot of his work. Let me try and remember some of his other stuff that he's done, even.
I once again went into this without any idea of who these people were. Like, I haven't even heard of any of these other shows, let alone have watched them. I need to get caught up on more stuff.
Have you seen the new Doctor Sleep?
I have not.
Hush.
I saw Doctor Sleep, that Shining sequel with Ian McGregor.
Yeah,
I've never seen The Shining.
You've never seen The Shining? You should. It's a classic. It's
Right.
not just to get the references, you know.
Yeah, no, Doctor Sleep.
It's literally referenced. I felt the same way. I saw far more Shining references before I ever saw The Shining. You know.
He's done a lot of big ones that are popular in the horror community. Is maybe not so much Doctor Sleep. I personally love that movie, but he's done Gerald's Game, the Ouija sequel, Origin of Evil, and Hush and Oculus, which are usually pretty appreciated by a lot of horror fans. This guy is really big into horror, and I think he's definitely great in that niche. Or that genre, to say. Definitely
certainly reflected in this work.
Yeah, focus a lot on character, which is usually like.
Well, you gotta make us give a shit, otherwise, who cares? You know.
Well, I mean, on some horror movies, they really do have very thin characters. It's been a change more recently as they've been trying to work on doing more in-depth, especially in the elevated horror side of things. Yeah. A lot of A24 movies have done that.
I think miniseries in general, it's obviously very applicable to the horror, scene. But I think it's just in general, I think a lot of people really like that because, like, some shows that are never ending are just too freaking long. Who can watch 15 seasons or whatever, you know?
No, yeah.
But movies are always too short because they're such a short medium. They have to be kind of shallow, surface level, and every scene has to mean everything. You know, like you have to have like one moment that explains like the last 10 years of this person's life. You know, versus you get to actually live with the character and grow attached and understand them at the very least. You know, in a miniseries or limited series.
And that's what I think is really nice about this kind of, like, the way Mike Flanagan, and I think a lot of Netflix and like a lot of mini series or limited series do it, is they do that 8 episode cap or 8 to 10 where it's not too bloated to where you just have filler, but it's economic and it's enough to explore characters and show enough of them without giving us too little, kind of leaving us wanting more, but also not that bloated filler nonsense, which bugged me about Supernatural, I think, so much.
Oh yeah, that's a really good example. I couldn't keep watching that show after like the 7th season because it just was not important.
So
I think that's why I like BoJack so much. It's this idea of leaving well enough alone. You know, knowing when to call it. You know,
reaching.
Man, it was the thing Avatar: The Last Airbender was two things for me. It was the first show that I ever watched where every episode meant something. And now, granted, like I accept that I was, like I was a child, but I was a child that had grown up watching Grey's Anatomy, Stargate, NCIS, these like adult TV dramas. But if I missed if I missed 4 episodes and then popped back in, nothing changed. Like the characters weren't different than they were. And so, I mean, like maybe some of these shows had overarching arcs, but they weren't the point. And I think that primetime television did that to us, where like you were supposed to be able to like churn out this kind of contained story. But then here was this children's show, this animated piece that told a story where the end of the last episode was the beginning of the next one. And all of these characters were going through these huge changes that wouldn't make any sense if you missed the piece. And then the second thing that it was, the first thing that it did for me, was it was the first show that ended, and I was like, damn, I would have liked more of that, which is exactly when you should end it. Like, let's not be LeBron James here. Retire before your fans see you come off the bench, right? Let's
I was gonna say the whole live long, either die a hero or live long enough to be a villain.
Yeah, there's the Giga Chad serialized television versus the Virgin episodic show.
Right.
The Giga Chad serialized TV definitely wins over me every time. I love seeing a story progress, and when it comes to a logical conclusion and ends there. I think is great. Let's talk about any highlights of the cast you guys want to bring up. I know I got a few.
Like what do you, like highlights? Just like what we thought the characters contributed, or
What are the which members of the cast you really think were standouts to you? Oh God.
Well,
Patrick did it for me.
Patrick.
Is that his name? I don't know any of these people.
Remember who Patrick is?
Well, I said Roderick.
Bruce Greenwood.
I don't know why I heard Patrick. That's so weird.
Bruce Greenwood.
This is Patrick.
Yeah, Bruce Greenwood was great in this.
Yep. I think he crushed this whole like this kind of dichotomy of like the soft, defeated, old man looking back at the poor decisions that he made, while also still like being this kind of, like I earned what I worked for, and I'm a businessman and everybody listens to me kind of thing. Like, I think he played those two roles well. The two dudes that played the younger and older version of Augie also really did it for me, especially, I think, particularly, and I don't know if this is like in the casting or if it was intentional, but they did such a good job of mimicking the mannerisms of each other to the point that not only were they like a believable visual sequence of those people, but like I actually understood how, like, I believed that was a younger version, like it tracked really well. And I think I have to believe that was in the acting.
That was great.
And then of the children, these names are going to start getting harder for me, but the media chick that had the assistants, she I feel like captured the like really intense insanity of her character really well, that I was talking about in the introduction. And then also the gold bug gal, again, like captured this batshit crazy broken person, and just like really really wrapped all of that up into the character that she was playing. And I think that those people all particularly stood out for me.
Oh yeah, those people you actually mentioned, they're actually, like, Mike Flanagan reuses a lot of his actors and actresses. Those are two that I've seen pretty much in everything that he's done regarding the Netflix limited series he does. And I agree with you. And they've demonstrated quite a range on a lot of them. They play vastly different characters to a lot of the different shows.
I see what you mean. You mean between the shows. I'm thinking, I mean, like, I think they displayed an awful lot of range just within the single show. You know what I mean? Like that's these characters are so nuanced, right? To make the descent into madness believable, you have to really ease into it, and kind of like allow these snippets of it to pass back and forth. Like when they're sane, when they're in control, they need to like allow these tiny little visions of the insanity, in the same way that then, like, as they're basically losing it, right, like they're spent, they need to still like have those tiny little tendrils of their original personality come through, in order to make it seem like this person still exists in there. And I think I mean, like, lots of the people really, really did well with that.
Loved them. So Samantha Sloyan, I think I said pronounce her name, and Katie Parker, the ones you kind of brought up. I think they were great in this. Jonathan, did you have any? And of course, Carl.
Well, that's just it. I'm having a hard time picking. Like,
yeah, they were all pretty great.
Just everyone was a freaking winner.
I gotta say, go ahead.
No, I don't really have much more to say. I can't really pick.
Oh,
everyone brought something to the table.
I'm inclined to agree. Yeah,
I gotta bring up Mark Hamill, kind of playing a character that I've never seen him play.
With this rough voice he was doing the whole time.
Rough voice of Mark Hamill.
I'm Batman.
The Pim Reaper. He was incredible.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I tried doing that voice a little too much.
I agree. Like, I think that Mark Hamill did a good job with it. I think that would be a difficult one to sell. But for me, the writing for that character is what really did it. You know, like the mystique around him. You know, like I remember particularly him sitting and doing the crossword puzzles in the courtroom. You know, like nothing captured the brilliance and the like. I don't want to, it's not just cold, but he was exacting. He was precise, right? Like this guy was so good at what he did that he was just like assaulting the world around him and was bored doing it, you know, like was just like playing games, you know. He was an intense character.
Well, I love that you bring up the writing about it, because a lot of what his mystique and a lot of his character kind of gets sold on too is also the fact that a lot of other characters talk about him. So when he does come up on screen, not only is Mark Hamill's performance good, but you're drawn in just by how other people perceive him, and now you want to see that mystery man, the Pim Reaper, as they call him.
Pim Reaper. Yep.
Yeah, I love that. I also want to bring up I guess you call her, is she the rape Verna? Carla Gugino? I think that's how you pronounce her name.
Yeah.
She was great too.
Mom from Spy Kids, who's apparently a vampire, because I've never seen her age a day in her life.
Yeah, she kind of has this otherworldly, I loved how she had that otherworldly kind of presence throughout the series. It was really good.
Had to demonstrate a lot of depth, you know, like it's not like she was being herself with a different wig, you know what I mean? Like when she was infiltrating these people's lives, you know, like she was putting on a lot of different masks. Did a good job with it.
Yeah, she was. And she was great. She always felt like there was like this level of control, and it was like this occult paranormal feeling about her whenever she was on screen, and it was kind of this haunting.
Even before you really understood that that's actually what was going on.
Yeah.
Like, I adore that through the majority of it, there was still a lot of question. Is this as supernatural as it seems, or are all of these people just batshit crazy, and she's kind of this like metaphysical representation of them all succumbing to being fucking terrible people?
Because a lot of the ways that some
excuses.
of them, a lot of the ways that some of them die, like some of the kids die, are like, this is kind of a product of your own actions.
Yeah,
you know, especially the first one.
Is the game designer dying from or going crazy because of the drugs, or because he's actually losing his mind? Yeah, the party. You know, like, is that actually a symptom of somebody setting this whole thing up, or was it just him being reckless and not paying any attention? Yeah, exactly. And so like those questions get answered pretty quickly. I shouldn't say pretty quickly,
both, really, right?
What's that?
And I think that's the point, is that, like, in a sense of poetic justice, right? Like, everybody's death was based on the way that they lived. And I think that the very real character that this lady becomes as an actual supernatural being in the story is doing that on purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, she's giving these people the deaths that in her eyes they deserve, and you get that as she's lying next to Frederick, and being just like, you went too far. I could have done this any way that I wanted to, and you fucked this up, so I am going to gut you slowly while you watch, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, none of it was on accident.
Yeah, she tries to give them opportunity to choose their death. Like, they're all gonna die, but she kind of, like, subtly gives them, like, doesn't have to go this way. You know, like,
she also almost gives them a chance out too. Is what's crazy, because, like, Perry, the first one that dies.
Oh yeah.
He tells him to leave.
Tells him to leave. He could die a different way.
He's
gonna die. But
all those security guards all left. I'm like 90% sure that's because she told them to leave too, and they actually heeded her warning.
Oh man,
I'm pretty sure she warned everybody in there to leave, and they chose the flesh over their lives, or whatever it was, you know.
Yeah. What a brutal. That was the second episode. Man, some of these kills in there were pretty brutal. And as a horror fan, oh my god, I loved it. The right out the gate, the second episode. Holy shit, the Mask of the Red Death inspiration was great. Love that. But also just like melting those fucking people down was brutal. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god. What a
man, and just like cinematically, the way that they did that, you know, like, there's all of this, the music is really overwhelming, you know, like, the whole thing is kind of surreal. All these people are like there, but there's this very kind of unpresent representation, and the sprinklers come down and you can't hear what's going on, and you're just like, yeah, all this party, and then, like, the music cuts, everything gets quiet, and it's just sprinklers and screams, right? You know, like, they just, like, snap that illusion so effectively.
Yeah, well, the whole episode, that water was supposed to be the grand finale, the completion of his vision and his, his entrance into being an Usher. And it was kind of his acceptance of being an Usher through that. The moment he did it is the moment he fucking died. Started to, anyways.
One of my favorite details about that character's death was that it is one of the ones that I most easily acknowledged was the most linkable to the sins of the family, was that this was something, the building was condemned, and it was where they were disposing of a lot of their toxic, caustic chemicals. And the reason, he just said, fuck it, hook it up to one of those water tanks up there. But it was not a water tank, it was freaking those horrible chemicals.
Storage site.
Yeah, and he had the pumps hooked up to the sprinklers, and then he was killed by the sins of his own family. And of course, obviously his own recklessness and just being a dumb idiot kid. And
he continued the chain of recklessness that his family had already, been doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was kind of poetic in the way that it was his brother's neglect, the same brother he hated, the same brother whose wife he was trying to bang.
Yep.
It was his negligence that got killed. Yeah.
Frodrick. Frodrick Frankenstein. Frankenstein.
I like that line where he's like, when she's like, you're a monster, and he's like, no, I'm Frankenstein, you're the monster. Like to his wife, fucking,
Yeah,
that was fucking wild.
I loved that. That was great. As they go down, I still overall liked the deaths. Some of them I thought were kind of like not quite as awesome or quite as great to me. Overall, though, still, like, if you're comparing, like, how good this is compared to with something else, this is still top tier.
Yeah.
But amongst the quality of the show, I think Napoleon's death and Goldbug, I forgot her name, but hers was a little like, I was like, stop hitting the mirrors, dumbass. Like,
Yeah.
But all the other ones were so good, so good. But this is kind of like, something I loved about this too was just the kind of relevance that they put onto it with the pharmaceutical industry, with especially, I think someone called it out and said it was like, this is like kind of meant to be a representation of the Sackler family with like opioids. This was, very relevant today, with our own opioid crisis. And they're making their own fictional drug, Ligadone, to remove pain. It's just this addictive drug. It's killing people.
I don't think they ever made that quite so clear as in like the final scenes of that last episode where Madeline is down talking to Roderick, and she's making the argument that like they didn't do anything wrong. These fucking monsters, these consumers, right? Like they. Yeah, no, I agree. One of my favorite points in that entire series is that line, and how fucking ruthless her character is and was through the whole thing, and how that doesn't ever become boring or unpredictable or anything like that, or like predictable or repetitive or anything. Like she really is just that. But yeah, I just to what you're talking about with it being, like an actual analogy of our experience, like that was real, right? Like that's not what's happening in the show. That's what's happening in 2023 as the show's coming out, right?
Fucking people out there, Roderick. You don't want Ligadone, don't buy it. You don't want to get addicted, don't abuse it. They're mad because we made it available and desirable. Hey, newsflash, it's our only fucking job. These people, they want an entire meal for $5 in 5 minutes, and then they complain it's made of shit and plastic.
Yeah, like this is like the cognitive dissonance you'd have to have running one of these corporations that are making and manufacturing drugs that are kind of killing people, with the opiate crisis. This has to be kind of like the rationalization. These people chose this, I love that monologue she has right there. It was great. These people chose to do this. They're the ones abusing it, We're just trying to give them something that'll remove their pain. Notwithstanding that the fact that it's an addictive drug and, but I just loved that about this show. Especially being someone interested in medicine. What are you guys' some of your favorite scenes? Let's talk about some of the favorite scenes.
I got a lot of those.
Okay. Actually, sorry.
I think I've already mentioned most of mine. A good collection of them.
Let's talk about the scenes that maybe you want to be a bit critical on. Let's bring up those, and then we'll end, or we'll go on to the next one of being more.
Okay, so we'll go our least favorite first.
Yeah, let's go with least favorite first, and then we'll build up. I don't have much.
Well, the beginning was a little, like, the first few seconds they like throw you in really fast. Like, there's this dude, he's at a funeral, like a triple funeral or something, and there's all this crap going on because they literally start you at the end, and then they bring you to the beginning. But then the first episode, maybe at least the first half of the episode was a little dry. I'd say probably the first episode. I don't think it really got, like, I felt like it was a little slow until like towards the end of episode 2 when the party started with Perry.
Yeah.
That's when it actually kind of picked up.
You feel the real progress of the story.
Yeah.
I'm inclined to disagree.
That's
I
fine.
think
Why so?
that, yeah, for sure. I think that all of the building of the mystique, like they asked all the questions in that first episode, right? What's going on here? What's happening to these people? Here's what the journey that you're setting off on. I think that I think that they spent exactly as much time as necessary to establish the setting of what's happening, in order to then, kind of like move that whole thing along. I agree. It probably was a little bit slower, but I don't think it was.
I don't think you could.
I didn't have a hard time getting into it. Yeah, for sure.
I agree. I agree with that. I do think it was a little slow in the beginning, but you couldn't change any of that. That was all necessary. And you're right. It asked the questions. It had that jingling, the little jester that appeared in his car, all that stuff kind of set up front, the interview, everything, all the pieces were being laid out for
all the red herrings.
Yes.
It was planting the seeds of all the assumptions that you might make as the show goes on about, do I understand what's going on yet? I until the last episode thought that the jester was like the real representation of Verna's character, and that we were going to find out that she was some sort of like god of mischief rather than like a god of death. Yeah, for sure. And so like there were all of these, like I said, the red herrings, the I'm going to give you just enough that maybe you can think that you can predict what we're about to do, and then be wrong.
Mm-hmm. It was masterfully done. I'd say, Sean, do you have any blah 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 moments for you in this show?
The video game brother, man, the names are so hard for me.
Leo, I think, right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay.
What's up?
I thought that was Napoleon, but I guess Leo is kind of fitting into that, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is short for that. Because like Perry wasn't his full name either, but yeah. So that whole thing was maybe a little lackluster. Like I don't really have any complaints necessarily, but just like he just like did too many drugs and then destroyed his house and murdered his boyfriend's cat, right? And I think that he was one of the less redeemable characters also, where like they didn't do as much to really explain why he was so fucked up. In fact, it almost seemed like his character was supposed to be kind of beyond that, like had not really bought in quite as hard into being the like the heir of all of this money, and was just kind of doing his own thing. And so like I there might be a little bit of critique there. I think that the scene where you met the mothers of the bastard children was just a little lackluster. I don't know if it was the acting or they just
I think it was actually kind of a good thing, because it shows you just how little he really did take those children from their mothers with money.
Okay.
Like they literally weren't this whole thing is about the Usher family, and literally the mothers of his children aren't even in the picture. Like I think it was almost like a true representation of that, or maybe I'm just excusing them, but back to that whole Leo thing. It bothered the crap out of me after he got that huge, deep scratch in his eye.
Oh,
like this guy,
so brutal.
And he just—I don't care how high this guy was. He just started playing video games, and I'm just like, what? I should be blind in one eye. Why is he playing video games?
Dude.
Right? I mean, gosh. Right?
God, that was a brutal scratch, though. Ugh.
It was. I didn't like it's so minuscule, but like the dead rat, the dead bird, the dead mice, all that stuff were like so fucking like dog toy. Like,
that's a good
that
point.
was where the budget cut was for sure. Super minimal though. Did not need, we know they're dead, but it just looked kind of a little silly. It was a little kind of small little nitpick.
I will say
The names.
That was the only CGI that I caught in the whole thing. Well, so I shouldn't say the only, because obviously, like, they probably didn't bring that house down. The raven, that kind of thing. But like the cat walking up and like stepping on his body afterward, I just like didn't get anything out of it, and it was just like, oh, good, like an obviously fake cat walking around.
Yeah. Napoleon's death, I think, was a little lame. His dumbass smashing holes in walls with like what was that? Thor's hammer, and then he just overswings over the balcony. Like, that was a little silly, but
He was high as shit and enraged, and maybe blind in one eye.
His depth perception was off.
Right.
The other one I think Tamerlane Usher, her death was, I love how she's losing her mind and stuff like that. I loved all that, but the way she died was I thought was kind of stupid. Like, she just keeps hitting
the mirror on the ceiling. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm behind that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was like,
also, to add back to the Leo thing, he might have had cat scratch fever. Fucking
cat scratch
down,
fever.
down.
Shut up, Jonathan. Goddamn.
But no, that chick's death was kind of silly. I didn't like that. I felt like Dupin, not the young one, but the old Dupin. I feel like throughout almost the entire show, he was just an excuse for Roderick to narrate throughout the film.
Yeah,
he needed someone to talk to besides just himself. Although he could talk to himself. I mean, it'd be even more reflective of like the Raven and all that stuff.
I still love the actor's performance in that. I love the moments.
I'm not saying what he did wasn't powerful. I'm just saying I felt like he was.
It was an excuse to have this kind of format to the story.
Yeah, nothing gets the actor at all.
His character as a whole, though, I think was a bit of an excuse, and that's kind of what I was getting at with when we were talking about the whale, with like all of the other actors other than Brendan Fraser were just like devices to move Brendan Fraser's story forward. But so Augie is, like, he has this compelling story where he's like working really hard and is this really compassionate, like has these really, really powerful monologues that he gets to give in the story, but for the most part, he exists entirely as a device. Like, he is there because without him, there's no court case. Without him, there's no confession. Without him, there is no, there's no reason for the young ushers to kill what's his butt, the dickhead that took over after their dad and everything. Like, I agree. I do think that his role is a little bit surface level, but I still think for a supporting cast that just like is there as a device, got to be pretty damn dramatic. Like, I think he executed
played
that role.
Powerful rival. Like a powerful rival to Roderick.
He was a really good foil to Roderick as well, too. To add a layer, because when the whole thing where he loses and he sees that guy goes and corrupts himself, he ends up becoming more of a family-oriented person, and he still does pursue the white whale of the Usher family, but I mean, he never loses his own code. He stuck to his beliefs. And
minus one exception.
Yeah.
No, you were on the same page. Yeah, I played by your rules once, and I never believed that it would be that your kids would start dying and everything like that. So like he got his humanizing moment where he was vulnerable, but also got his moment at the end to back up what Matt's talking about with being the kind of antonym of the Roderick Usher character, where he gets to cap that whole thing off with the "I'm the richest man in the world," this kind of overarching analogy that Lenore, is that the no Annabelle is the wife,
Annabelle
that she
Lee.
gets to really she gets to really drive home of like, you were rich, how can I contend with that, and now I see the poverty in you, that he got to be a kind of a instrument of that whole moral code.
Yeah.
Well,
or
and
story.
they really tie that well in the end, because she says that about him being poor and his sister being small. Annabelle does, but Dupin at the end, he says, on Usher's grave, all the Usher's grave, that he's the richest man in the world, and it's because he has a husband and kids, grandkids, and a family and a life, and it's enough for him. Even though and that's just it. We talked about him chasing the white whale. He got his white whale at the end, and he didn't do anything with it. He let it go.
Realized that the pursuit of that thing was so pointless, that it meant so little in comparison to the things that he was assigning real value to. And funny enough, that Pym, of all people, be one who is this character that is so like unscrupulous, right? It's just like the dude that gets his hands dirty. Do I have permission to treat these negotiations as hostile? So that guy gets to say, no, I have never been leveraged in my 70 years of life, and I will not break that streak. You will not tempt me, right? That. I have no collateral. Nothing is important to me except my record of being impossible to be controlled.
It's a control thing. Yeah, exactly. He doesn't want to ever be controlled. I feel like we were talking about Dupin giving up his morals once to lie in court, and him giving it up at the end, because I feel like because that's what happened. I mean, he pretty much wanted it so bad, at least in that moment, that he was willing to give up his morals for it, which is the same thing that Roderick pretty much did when he chose, money over doing what was right with his family, with Annabelle, with everyone. Very poetic throughout the whole thing, I
mean, you would hope so. It is literally based off of poetry.
Yeah, indeed. Well, they definitely hit it home throughout,
Yeah, I agree. No, and that was kind of what I was talking about with the poetic justice of all of their deaths, like that. So much of this entire show was so intentional. I don't feel like very much of it they were just like, well, we need to get from point A to point B somehow, so let's do it this way because that's what came to mind. No, they're
Deus Ex Machina. Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, I don't know what that phrase means.
It's just a contrivance of like the writer paints himself into a corner and just has to find a way out.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Just an escape.
Yeah.
Escape from your own plot holes.
Yeah.
Like lifting onto your toes and ending the movie in a flash of white.
Yeah. No, I think that was great. What is some of your favorite scenes now? Let's talk about that, dude, because I got a lot. I got a lot
too. It's hard. Well, we've talked so much about Mark Hamill. I literally can't think of a slimier, nastier fictional lapdog of a lawyer.
So good.
I did love his character. Mark
lawyer.
Hamill came through. Yeah, no shit.
I don't know. Do we actually have to listen to this guy? Like, I don't know who right? Like, all of this like impossible, sinister connections that this guy's been able to just like literally get around the law.
Yeah, there's like a crime scene of like so many people, and freaking they're just like, he has clearance somehow.
I love that they explain that in the interaction that he has with Verna, where she says you've lived this kind of perceived immortality, but it is only a reflection. He's only been so successful because the Ushers were guaranteed supernatural legal immunity.
Yeah, the Ushers are the sun and he's the moon, merely bouncing off light from the sun.
Ah,
But
that's
it's not
nice.
his
I
own.
like that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, that was great. I also just loved every like little unscrupulous scene that he does, especially the one where he catches Verna and like, dude, it was just like clockwork, dude. It was just like so methodically done. He just injects her, lays her down, rolls her up on a carpet, and then ties her up, and then he's like, "All right, ready to ship the package," you know. Like, I love watching you
She
work.
let him do it too.
Yeah,
And then like called him out on it. It was just like, oh yeah, good job. It was so cute that you had your driver waiting out there for 2 days, you know, like yeah.
Good.
I like that they had like the bodies that would later get to revealed as of his deceased children.
Mm-hmm.
But just like throughout, it just continued, just a whole eeriness, this haunted madhouse,
gives a little bit of a taste of what to come and see. Like, well, how did this kid get so fucked up looking?
Yeah, they did. Every time they kind of showed you their death just before it happened.
Yeah,
Or just before.
great.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Speaking of the deaths, I definitely have favorites. Like, obviously, the Mask of the Red Death was incredible. Great way to kick it off.
I feel like they put more work into it.
Yeah.
Than some of the others. And I think it's because it was the first. Yeah, for sure.
It's the
they
first
had to kind of
domino,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I loved that. I loved the actual Rue Morgue.
Here we are.
That one was really good with the chimps, dude. Chimps scared the shit out of me. So that obviously that got a response out of me. But
Right.
I really did enjoy Fuck It, I Got Mine. That was the way that character needed to go out. I was talking about like the blending of the insanity and the sanity of these people, and that was one of those moments for me where she was just like, you know what, might as well be this way, like I lived my life the way that I was going to.
Fuck it. I got mine.
Mm-hmm. And then there's the chimp on the table, dude. She pulls up the camera, and that was just such a good shift, transition. And I was like, "Oh fuck!"
well, including her before she even like becomes straight up the chimp. She starts acting like one,
Yeah,
like she starts walking like one.
That actress wearing a lot of different masks and doing a good job of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, really loved the Telltale Heart one. More for like the consistent of like, I love the way that it adapted that story, because in Telltale Heart, you hear the killer hears the heartbeat in the walls or the floorboard, whatever the hell. Been a while since I read it.
Yeah.
But instead she's hearing her little automatic heart that's supposed to pump the blood for it. And it's just like, at first I was like, what is that noise? Is that supposed to be, what is that supposed to be? Because it's not a heartbeat, obviously.
Yeah.
And then to have that reveal being that the heartbeat was the little automatic heart that was pumping was.
And when I first watched that,
great.
I did not see that coming the first time I watched that. I should have. I literally didn't until it was there, and I'm like, what?
I should have too, but I did not see that coming. I was like, oh, that is perfect. That is so good. Because that whole time she's working with that technology.
Victorine's the death itself, her just like realizing that she's murdered her girlfriend and then kills herself, like, okay, a little lackluster. Mm-hmm. I'm willing to completely forgive that fact of it for the build up leading into it. Like she captured the whole like the calling I need you to come back. I need you to forgive me, you know, like, and just like the denial of the death, and then like walking into the room and being like, oh yeah, I remember now. Oh, that's why it's making that noise. that,
No.
that whole thing got me. And well, and then also the lead up to the like, maybe you can help me solve this problem, you know, like, do you hear that? And for the first time, then he can. What the fuck is that sound? You know, like,
Right? You're wondering if they're
distant.
yeah.
I could
I was
not.
gonna say they're wondering if they had that thing that they said. I can't remember what the French word was, but the an illusion shared by two. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
I
But
could
it
have said that
wasn't,
better
like you
myself. Like
No, you got that.
I forgive the lackluster. I'm gonna stab myself in the heart thing.
Yeah.
Because the build up to it was just so good.
To backtrack just a tiny bit while I'm thinking about it, we were talking about the not as good scenes. Did anybody else feel like the whole flashback with the two, with Madeline and Roderick as children, to be a little unmemorable? That just like okay, you know, like mom is a secretary, and you know, like it kind of set the setting of the whole deal, but you know, I guess I feel like Roderick was talking to Augie, and he's like, in order for you to understand this story, you need to understand the kind of environment that we grew up in, and then I feel like they just did not paint the picture of the hardship of their childhood quite as thoroughly as they built me up for.
It was very unmemorable. It didn't feel like it had much of an impact long term.
Well,
I'm sure if you.
I would say, like, you know, for poetry's sake, I think it was important, not solely the children themselves, but the whole thing with their mom. That was like the main focus. Especially when we talk about his mom.
The dude to death.
That's that. Just it. The first time I watched, I didn't even pick it up until like the end. That dude was their father. And fucking, I know that he was banging her, but I didn't know he got her pregnant twice. I'm not twice, once. They were twins. But
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're twins. They are the offspring of that dude who was banging the secretary, which was their mom.
Mm-hmm.
And he refused to help her, and she killed him. And then that's the same exact way that Frederick's sister killed him. Not Frederick. Frederick's sister killed him. Killed Frederick. Was the same way. Roderick, sorry, my bad. You're right. Dude. Roderick died the same way his father died, but it was with his sister and not, you know, I don't know. It's just wild. It literally started and ended the same way in a way. It started with her mom killing her dad and ended with the sister killing the brother. Yeah. After the brother tried to kill the sister.
Yeah.
No, I did like that they wrapped that around the whole. Come to think of it, mom was the same way, you know, buried her alive.
That was actually almost comical for a moment. You know? A little comedy in the tragedy.
Was even a reflection of Vic. Of the whole of the like, maybe this atrocious thing that I didn't actually work out the way that I remembered. You know, it was.
Yeah. Well, there definitely felt a little bit of this unreliable narrator aspect to it, because I mean, even then, Dupin points out that like most of these things, especially their deaths and all these things, like you're assuming, right? And he's like, no, they told me, you know, and it's like the spirit telling him, but it might be his dementia. Or his madness, just like in The Raven, you know, as he ponders weak and weary, you know. So I don't know.
And what a way to wrap that whole thing up. I was not disappointed. As you know, the house coming in, the poetry being read over all of this stuff happening, the full circle of like him having purchased the sapphires as a gift for his sister, and that being a device of him talking about like the power of his wealth. You know, like I keep saying it, it's the intention of all of it, you know, like the fact that all of those decisions, even if they happened 4 episodes ago, like ended up being significant and you know, like being divisive in something that was going to happen later.
No, I love that. I want to bring up another favorite parts of mine. These are like smaller. I want one big one I want to finish with, but this part just kind of
Well, let me
made
know when
laugh.
you get there, because I'll have a few I want to knock off before you give us a finale on that.
Okay. The ones where Augie was just like every now and again, like through each story, he had Roderick has a vision of his kid, you know, and they're like all fucked up looking, and he reacts to it. And then there's just some of those times where Augie was just like, "Look, motherfucker, you don't chill the fuck out. I'm leaving."
Okay, Jesus! The hell is wrong with you?
Sorry.
Don't you raise your voice to me.
I kind of love that. I laughed during that. Like,
Don't raise your voice at me.
don't raise your
It was the
voice at
only,
me.
it was the
Yeah.
only aggression that we saw out of him, where he set, you know, like this was no
His
longer a
boundaries.
cordial conversation for that brief
Yeah,
moment. Yeah, it was almost even like a little ghetto, even, right? Like, look here, motherfucker,
The hell is wrong with you?
right? You know, and it's just like came out of nowhere.
Fucking Samuel Jackson came out.
I thought that was great. I love that. It cracked me up, man. But no, that made me laugh. And the jump scare, of course, with the exploding window actually got me. That was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those actually got me. They did such a good job with those, and to back up why I liked Roderick's actor so much is just that he captured that real, honest terror so effectively.
I think, listen to some of the favorites. It was just for a moment, but when Roderick envisioned him killing himself, jumping off of his tower,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
I felt, but then
coward.
afterwards he did, yeah, exactly. He started calling himself
That
a
wasn't so
coward.
bad.
'Cause
You can't do 10
could have saved
seconds.
them all. Yeah, and you could have saved them or something. You can save them,
Yep.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. There was something about that. That was just so dark and it felt so real, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That was more powerful, but easily overlooked, I think.
Oh yeah, I do actually love that scene too, where Verna comes in and is just like, here's all the raindrops, and here's all the bodies of the legacy of the House of Usher, you know.
This
And
is your legacy.
I thought
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
great, and just seeing the
Oh,
people
yeah.
just falling from the sky was pretty awesome. I thought that was pretty great. I thought it was kind of funny too that his little like young Irish girlfriend there just kept getting fucked up by everybody. Dude just like threw that microphone.
Oh man,
at her.
taking the mic stand to the face. Like, I don't know that you would live through that.
Right? Oh, dude, I felt bad for her
I felt
throughout.
bad, but I kind of laughed at it. I was like,
yeah,
"Goddamn."
well, that's just it. She is like the Meg of the group, you know? She's
Yeah, she is
the one everyone's shitting on, you know? She's the punching bag.
Watch. Mine's full of poo.
Her
She's the
husband
Meg.
Stop.
didn't give a
And
fuck
I
about
actually
her.
really-
You're a object of my business. You're a success story.
Exactly. He basically married his drug, is what he did. It was
Yeah.
fucking
It's a really good
crazy.
line.
Excellent. He married his drug because she was so much of her.
He was
Yeah.
like the physical embodiment of it,
Mhm.
like literally. You know.
Just soak it up. You're like nobody I've ever seen. You're a large part of you is Ligadone. Yeah, those are good lines, man. Those were powerful, and even before they were like having the fight, and like the first time that she talked about like maybe I want to wean myself off, and his response is, "How would that look?" That was gross.
Yeah,
Like
he
that.
didn't care
Yeah.
about her at all. You
Yep.
know.
Mm-hmm.
He was literally just a PR stunt almost, you know.
Yeah,
And what better person to do it than a junkie, I guess. It's just so fucked up how much she took advantage of such a vulnerable person.
Yeah.
With a lot of love. I mean, she didn't have a lot of love, but she wanted a family. She wanted to be a part of a family.
yeah.
You know? And instead she
Oh
was just
man, this
productized
family's so
with-
big.
Yeah.
The moment that she had with the gold bug gal,
yeah.
where she's like, "Have you ever been in this house alone? It's so big," you know, like the little bit of rambling that she got with the sibling that was the hardest on her. Like none of them liked her, but she was calling calling her it, right? Don't talk about it to me. Don't talk about the junkie. You know, like that was
they're all very
completely
cruel to
devoid
her,
of
and I
human
really like
connection.
that she got sober and she literally took like her chunk of the Usher money and freaking used it to make the world a better place and give other people freedom from drugs too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That one actually had a kind of a success story too, and maybe the only one with a happy ending.
Yeah, I mean there was
her
kind of the
Well, so
the disfigured mother.
Frederick's wife.
Yeah.
Got a happy ending, and you only got to experience it through the death of Lenore. Well, but you know, like, man, that
her
part moved
daughter's
me.
dead. Fucking, you know, her. Yeah, just the torture she went through. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's just a not as bitter ending, but I wouldn't call it a happy ending.
I wouldn't call it happy, but it was definitely a more positive for the humankind.
Yeah. Well, it shows you, you know, she can still go push through even despite all the trauma. You know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just some of the most fucked up torture you can seriously, I get freaked out when it comes to like needles and people doing like stuff with your teeth, like a hammer to the teeth or something. Fuck that. Like I freak out watching stuff like that, and I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just fucked.
So shoot, losing my train of thought. It'll come back to me. Don't mind me.
Okay. Well, okay. I'll say like there's at least two more things I wanted to bring up. The whole when life gives you lemon speech.
It's a good one. Yep.
I thought that one
only
was
then do you make some goddamn lemonade.
Like, I mean, just truly just breaking down this you know, breaking down capitalism. You know, just like how to really go on.
It's the same speech that he did when he was oh man, why is it escaping me now? Because he had the lemons. The sapphires. These are priceless. But you don't ask how much are the sapphires. You ask how much is the army, how much is the lawyer, how much is, you know, like those two speeches I see as very parallel and were powerful.
Yeah. About you're just thinking about it the wrong way. You got to think about, you know, how to get it no matter what. You know, you're thinking about just, you know, I don't know. You're not thinking out of the box in a way. I don't know if that's the right word, but
like that was like a symbol.
Not having a business mind or a corrupt mind.
Those
almost a political mind.
Those sapphires were kind
Excuse the pun. It's literally that he's saying that your poor mindset is the reason why you don't have money. The reason that you don't understand wealth, you know, like, yeah, it's
because they don't think like that. Most people don't. Being like a billionaire is like a rare thing, and for good reason. It takes a really kind of a fucked up kind of person to have that much greed. You know, to an like something that you don't expect out of kings. I mean, literally ripping the eyes out of queens and goddesses. You know.
Yeah.
Like,
I liked that was kind of like almost like a symbol of Madeline Usher's goal was like immortality. Those sapphires. Because they were kind of like, that's what she wanted to achieve with her technology, was a sense of immortality. And she never got it. But
he might have in the afterlife, right?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. And the other line, the speech thing that he gives, it's just really quick. It's just like, it's when he like literally tells Dupin, like basically like it's not his fault, like even though he threw in that lie and it kind of did tear his family apart, you know, that he is, you know, that it's not related and that he relieved. He could and should maybe fight this guy, you know, like you said, it's his foil, but instead he doesn't want to pass that pain because he knows just how painful guilt really is. And he says, the mind of guilt is full of scorpions, and I wouldn't wish their sting on anyone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just this kind of poisoning of the mind. Yeah.
So much good poetry in this. Ben Greenwood really whenever he recited poetry was great. It was kind of tragic that he could have been a poet. Not a very wealthy poet, but,
Yeah.
he would have been happy.
I will say, the last thing I really want to say is that frickin' the granddaughter, the granddaughter's frickin' death. I'm trying to her frickin' I should remember her name. It's Lore. What's her name? Lenore. I should know that because Lenore is the same name of the girl that the dude's mourning over in the poem The Raven. Over Lenore. Nevermore,
Was it?
It was Lenore. In The Raven, it's Lenore. And she's named Lenore.
I'd lost my train of thought on. What was the significance of the text message being nevermore from the AI?
That's what
the
the Raven says throughout the poem, The Raven. Because he goes on about, evermore. He basically wants, and he knows the answers to these things, but he keeps asking the Raven, all these questions, and it just keeps replying nevermore. No longer. The Raven, the whole thing itself is a man's descent into madness over grievance of Lenore, and until eventually the Raven takes him in. It starts with a small little thing and becomes quickly a descent into madness. The whole time the Raven only saying nevermore.
Gotcha.
I like that.
It's like if you were talking to a parrot and it just kept saying the same thing, but you kept making it more and more and more, and then it just grows and grows.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm explaining the Raven properly, but that's somewhat of my interpretation.
I gotta say, I loved the. So this is my final scene. Did anyone have anything else you guys want?
I want to say I did. I went and listened to The Raven. I feel like such an idiot, guys. Here's a confession. I did not know, nor have I read or listened to The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. I didn't even know. I would have fucking done some research because, like I said, I went back through The Raven to kind of pick up on some stuff because I recognized that, but I didn't even know The Fall of the House of Usher was its own poem, and I kind of wish I would have delved into that before doing this. Yeah. My only confession in this.
Well, I wanted to read the entire list of his short stories before we did this, but I had not made it through there. A lot of life.
Oh man, it's what I was talking about, man. I do not like Edgar Allan Poe's writing. It is so impossible to read and just dry and repetitive and macabre and moody. Holy smokes. Never in my life have I ever been so miserable that I could relate with his poetry. It's tough for me, and obviously I'm sure there's something there because I loved all of the dark stuff that was in then this piece that was derived from it, but
for some reason my brain, I love South Park because they make Edgar Allan Poe like a modern goth though. He's just you don't understand me, whatever. Just this whiny, moody, teenage boy. Even though, gosh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Poe, I think he's a powerful poet, and even if you don't like his work, it's hard to deny what work he has inspired even after death, like this show,
Undoubtedly, yeah.
The show would not exist if it weren't for Edgar Allan Poe. Well, I'm just saying that's what's interesting, because I know you like this show, but this show would not exist if it weren't for Poe.
I'm not crazy about the Beatles' music either, but it's not like they didn't completely revolutionize a music scene that I've learned to love. There's a lot of rock and roll music that I adored, and music written by the bands and everything. That whole thing was made possible by them.
Absolutely. I'm just saying you don't have to appreciate Poe, but we do got to appreciate what he has done for art and poetry and writing.
So I wanted to say one of my favorite scenes or favorite real parts was when they incorporated the Cask of Amontillado, because that is one of my favorite stories from Poe. And I just loved the way that they incorporated that in. It was a fucking fantastic reveal on why the jingling was coming from the wall, what the gesture was. And I just loved that part where they were just methodically I love that competency porn, that competency fetish that you can get from certain shows where they're just almost they're not really looking at it, but they're just scooping up the cement, they're putting the mortar on the bricks and they're laying them down, and that guy's going through all 5 stages of grief.
Yeah, no, that was a brutal scene. It does remind me of another brutal scene, just to call out really quick. The moment that they've been practicing the trial, and then young Roderick walks in and testifies the opposite, and Augie is just
broken down,
flabbergasted. Yeah, for sure, just furious and confused and desperate, and just that was a good moment. But anyway, yes, yeah.
The whole brick scene, I like that the last brick they put in was a brick that said, "You are so small."
Yeah.
Which is the same thing Annabelle Lee said to Roger's sister.
Yeah. Isn't it also what either their dad or the next guy that they killed, didn't one of them call the kids so small? I feel like it was referenced a third time.
Their father might have. Now that you mention it, their father might have called them small.
No shot.
Yeah,
or said that his mom was so small.
When they were asking for help.
Yeah, there's something that went along those lines.
Great.
It's just kind of an interesting callback. Well, and in that scene, that's Annabelle, I'm pretty sure, says that to that girl that night. The night just before they kill him, I think.
Yeah.
Or no, maybe it was I think it was a week later or something, or a few days later. But
yeah.
Doesn't matter. It's still pretty hard hitting.
Yeah, it was great having that "You are so small" and the little candle. It was great. I love the way that they incorporated the story.
You're so small. You try to be so big, but you are actually just really small. You're trying to be so rich, but really you're the poorest of them all. That's kind of consistently throughout.
And just the idea, there's so much that connects that I loved about that was just this whole foundation that they've built is on the foundation of their sins, and just that whole scene was just perfectly executed.
That literally then comes crumbling around them, the house falling in on itself was great.
It was great.
The thing that broke me the biggest victim being Lenore. His granddaughter. The one good Usher besides Annabelle Lee.
And the conversation that she and Verna had, this brings me no joy, but that decision that you made, you did that, and I wanted you to hear that first. That was good stuff.
It makes me. I almost want to cry now just thinking about it. It's just He's just a victim of circumstance by nothing more than blood.
Mm-hmm.
Even though she was an Usher, she had more good in her heart than all of them put together, except for her grandmother. Yeah. I guess I'd just say love and appreciate what you have and who you have it with. And that, this might be a stretch, but, nothing's wrong with being content with a simple, humble life. Because chasing money and power, it's never going to be enough. But a loving family, that might just be enough if you let it be enough.
Yeah. Manage your expectations. Sean,
Verna calls that out. Is what's kinder? Is 40, 50 years of luxury and wanting for nothing better than 70, 80 years of heartbreak and struggle? It's a good question. Most of us never get to know the answer to. The answer is thrust upon us. Yeah.
And I think above all that stuff that Jonathan said was great. I think you should appreciate and love what you have. And of course, the other theme is eat the rich and billionaires are not ethical, they're evil. And
Yeah, right. There's no such thing as ethical capitalism.
Oh, no, just don't be a piece of shit. Be good and appreciate the people around you. And don't make Faustian deals.
And if you do have money and power, use it for good. Use it to better the world.
Yeah.
Well, and so funny enough, from based on all this talk about, don't be a piece of shit and be good and that kind of thing, is that I think it does a really good job to call into this question of what is good. Like, none of these people thought that they were evil, not at least until the very end, when they kind of had this supernatural being thrust the morality of their decisions in front of them. And even in the face of that, I mean, like, the scene immediately following Roderick looking at his literal mountain of corpses was his sister justifying that those things were not their fault, and that they just did what people asked of them. And I think it begs this incredibly complex question that people need to be asking. And also, I think the answer to it breeds a certain humility into us that fosters forgiveness, right? That understanding that all of these people were just doing their best. They were doing what they thought was good for them, for the people they cared about, like, they were just making the decisions that seemed right at the time. And from an outside perspective, it's really easy for us to say, like, oh, well, that was fucked up. But it made sense to them, and if we're willing to understand that all of the atrocious things that happen in the world around us are just people doing what they think is best, like, it fosters at least hopefully a little bit of hope for humanity. Not that we're all these gross, greedy consumers that have no ability for compassion and everything.
Yeah.
Right.
To
The
kind of
sorry, go on. No, go on, Hammer, please.
to go off of that, I do want to say, yes, I do think that they are definitely doing the best they can with what they in their situation. But I do think that they had to use a lot of resistance and cognitive dissonance to kind of rationalize those things,
Oh yeah, they're all super fucked up. Yeah, I don't want to take that away at all. Yeah,
well, this all comes down to good and evil being a subjective matter.
Yeah,
and that's why a lot of people so I mean, I don't think everyone does, but it almost seems like on a general society basis, a sociological basis, people almost need either government or religion, or oftentimes those are fused together as a moral compass. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but that's what it's placed as.
values.
Because what is good? What is evil? And people look to laws or to religion as an answer for what is right, what is wrong. Even though I think some things are played into, and the details are what's hard of what makes good and evil. Because no one's perfectly good or evil.
Well,
I also think that's why gray characters are so important in shows now. No one wants the good character, like the good guy versus the bad guy. That we see in like Tolkienism and stuff. Like that age is kind of over. It's people want the nuance, the flawed characters, because that's where the humanity is.
Yeah, who's supposed to be the protagonist of this story, right? Like, is it Verna, who goes around tormenting people and murdering everybody? Is it, like these tiny, insignificant characters that weren't pieces of shit but played no role, right? Like, theoretically, the protagonist is Roderick, and I don't know if there's a whole lot of pros to that antagonist,
Dupin.
right?
It might be Dupin.
Well, I'd say
That's
it would
fair.
be Roderick because it does center around him, but it does kind of shift a lot too because there's multiple character perspectives we take.
Yeah,
he is the boss.
Just because you're the bad guy doesn't mean that you're the antagonist. You could be the villain and the protagonist at the same time.
fair enough.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But
Yeah, I don't know. I'd say either Dupin or freaking Roderick's wife, maybe, kind of. But they're so displaced. They're so not the focus of the story, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think
it's complicated.
to say is
maybe
that
there is no protagonist.
No, there's a
that's
protagonist.
exactly what my point is, you know, like to kind of back up what Matt was talking about with the age of all of that being super black and white is in our media is kind of over, you know, like people are longing for these distraught, complex, confused characters because that's where we are. Like, who do you know that has a good sense of who they are and what they want, is just like comfortable with where they're at in the world? You know, like, yeah, I have a good job and I feel confident and I'm, you know, no, we're all broke and fucking overworked and exhausted and confused, and we don't know if our planet is going to burn down before our food poisons us to death. You know, like these are not black and white times.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, definitely a lot more nuance.
But
and,
I think
we talk about art reflecting reality.
Yeah, but we should strive for good, you know, in the end.
Yeah,
because we do know.
Yeah, well, that's just
like
the question is what is good, right? I think that's what we were kind of getting at.
I think we know what good is by the nature of what evil is that evil causes suffering and pain on other people, and I think we shouldn't make excuses for why this suffering and pain is okay. We shouldn't turn a blind eye. We shouldn't create a sense of denial for ourselves because it's fitting to our situation and what's best for us. Sometimes doing good makes sacrifices, you know.
I've got a really fun example that I've used to ask this question a lot of times, though, because like you're talking about, you know, like goodness would be not inflicting harm at the very least. But so take the Vikings, for example, who. So like murder's bad. That makes sense to the three of us. But dying in battle was not only the only way, it was not only mercy to kill somebody, but it was the best thing that you could do to them. You know, like, thank goodness I murdered that fucker instead of having them die in their sleep or something. That would be terrible. So like this concept of them, you know, like inflicting harm as we would see it as a kindness, you know, like it ends up. I think the very obvious answer to this question and many of the big, hard philosophical questions is our understanding of the objective, the idea that like lots of things could be considered good and bad depending on what your culture is. Forgive us of our understanding of the subjective, which is that in our culture now, murdering people is not a good thing, you know, like, and so like I think our question of what is good and what is bad is really not so hard to answer when we stop trying to ask that question in an abstract way, right? Like, we don't have to answer what is good and bad for somebody in Malaysia that we've never met before. We have to answer that question for ourselves, and I don't have that hard of the time coming up with that, right? You know, like, is punching this person in the face, stealing their wallet bad? Yes. You know, like, I don't have to wonder.
It's like
but there's definitely a lot more. It's harder with more nuanced things.
One of my favorite quotes of Marcus Aurelius was, "Argue no more about what it means to be a good man, be one." Because in yourself, you do know. Like, you know, to me, that means in yourself, you know what right and wrong is. You shouldn't have to make excuses for it.
Oh, yeah.
You know the difference.
The details might be a little blurred, but the general goal and standardization, you know, usually rings true within oneself. And you don't need government or religion for that.
Yeah. But anyway, God dang, we got way too deep into this philosophy, did we?
We went just right. I think we did it just right.
Oh, this was wonderful. Loved having you on, Sean.
This was quite the pleasure, Sean.
Yeah.
Loved having you.
I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed watching the stuff, especially because they were things that were not on my radar. You know, like, it wasn't something that I was planning on picking up, and so So yeah, you guys inspired me to watch this. They are like I said earlier, promptly becoming, some of the best pieces of media that I could think of off the top of my head. And yeah, I appreciate you guys giving me the chance.
Yeah, it was great. Also, make sure that you check out Stranded by Choice. Stranded by Choice.
Stranded by Choice. Yep.
All you nerds out there, you got 5 minutes to spare. Listen to a song at least on Spotify. Give them a listen. You might find your new favorite band. Stranded by Choice.
Huge fan of the voice that only I hear off their album Hell Roaring. It's a good one. Good place to start.
Good place to start. Hell Roaring. Stranded by Choice. You're here first.
We gotta check it.
Or second. That one specifically first. All right. We've gone on for a while. Love you guys. Thank you for listening. Have a good night.
Have a good night, everybody.
And don't
get your shit together. Go for a walk.
All right. Right.
Drink some water.
Nighttime somewhere.
All right.
Night.
All right, guys. Good night.
Pleasure as always.